I don't care what anybody says, there's no other rapper that had the type of publicity that Tupac had. I don't think they could even afford to pay for it. Pac had the it factor, je ne sais quoi. No matter where he went, paparazzi was right there. I haven't seen anyone have that much attention since. The only other artist who had more attention than Pac was Michael Jackson. That's it. I'll be back. Hey, welcome back, folks. Let's get into this. I need to preserve my voice because, yeah. So, let's get into it. I was conducting research when I ran right smack into this article that lays out how much Diddy actually obsessed over Pac. I skimmed through it and I was like, what the H? Diddy's Bad Boy Records spent a whole summer studying one of Tupac's greatest songs. You gotta be kidding me. When I read that, I was like, what? Okay, let me see. And then let me go on. Diddy's Bad Boy Records spent a summer studying Tupac's sound to replicate his success, but now faces serious legal troubles. Diddy's Bad Boy Records turned into a hip-hop summer school, and the curriculum, one of Tupac's greatest tracks. The team went all in, analyzing every note, rhyme, and vibe, aiming to unlock the secret sauce behind Tupac's legendary sound. Imagine producers with headphones on, scribbling notes and crafting beats as they dissected the genius of Tupac's artistry, all while dreaming of a chart-topping hit that could capture that same magic. Now that's absolutely crazy. I thought the purpose of any artist would be to want to create their own, you know? Diddy and his Bad Boy crew once spent an entire summer locked in on one mission: crack the code to one of Tupac's greatest hits, I Get Around, and create their own smash. Yup. While hip-hop was blowing up, Diddy, back when he was Puff Daddy, was hustling to make Bad Boy a powerhouse. And let's be real, if you're going to study anyone, Pac's a solid choice. Fresh off a $10 million deal with Arista after getting booted from Uptown Records, Diddy had one goal: make bad look good. His skeleton crew was cranking out hits like Craig Mack's Flavor in Your Ear and Biggie's One More Chance. But Diddy wasn't trying to ride the wave. He wanted to make Bad Boy the wave. That's where Tupac came in. Diddy admired Pac's effortless blend of street and Main Street vibes. He wanted that same flavor for Bad Boy, so his team spent an entire summer studying I Get Around like it was a final exam. Even though Diddy was all about building bridges, Pac wasn't buying it. To him, Diddy was just another exec, not a real peer. What followed was the infamous East Coast West Coast beef, but for that summer, Diddy was all about figuring out how to battle that Pac magic. Remember I said Pac had that je ne sais quoi? You can't buy that. No one could give it to you. No one can train you on how to have that. It just is natural. Let's continue. And man, it worked. Bad Boy was about to blow up and hip-hop would never be the same. Yeah, Diddy came in and commercialized it. He kind of came in and diluted it. Like, whoever wanted to have like a sound message in their rap to help the masses, Diddy came in there and said, we don't want that ish. And just, imagine a bottle of top shelf liquor and someone come in and pour rusty water in it. That's what Diddy did. Let's continue. Diddy's career, unmatched. Bad Boy Records basically shaped the hip-hop landscape. Think Notorious Big, Faith Evans, Mace, but now his empire is looking shaky, and the genre itself is under the microscope. Tracks like NWA's A B is a B and Snoop Dogg's Ain't No Fun paint a picture that is hard to ignore. As Diddy faces trial, hip-hop's darker sides getting exposed too. Time for the industry to take a long, hard look in the mirror. And I would like to add, don't just look at hip-hop. Don't do it. Let's continue. That's the end of the first article that was talking about Diddy being obsessed with Pac's track. I found another one, Rolling Stone article, that talks about people sharing their experience with seeing Diddy's darker, violent side. So let's get into it. Bad Boy for Life. Sean Combs' history of violence for decades. Sean Diddy Combs was hip-hop's boisterous showman. Now dozens of former friends, employees, and bad boy artists allege an abusive, menacing figure behind the facade. She took the stage at the BET Awards in June 2022 to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award. Sean Diddy Combs was elated. Yeah, and a whole lot of yeahs that followed. He bellowed. The adoring crowd, who gave him a sustained standing ovation, including his mother and children, longtime friends, and music industry peers, Kanye West, Janelle Monáe, Babyface, and Lil Wayne. After 3 decades of restless hustling that took him from hungry teenage intern to AR executive, producer, label impresario, respected fashion designer, and household brand name, Diddy has seemingly reached the apotheosis of his career. He closed his eyes and repeatedly thanked God. He got down on one knee and praised his mother. He name-checked a laundry list of people who mentored and inspired him. Anything I do is through love. Combs proclaimed early in a 9-minute speech, "That's what I evolved to be, and that's what I'm doing right now." But soon Combs struck a more somber tune. "I was in a dark place for a few years," he said. "I gotta give a special thank you to the people that was really there for me." He listed friends and advisors. Then, looking directly into the camera, he added, "Cassie, for holding me down in the dark times. Love." He raised one hand to make the L sign and held his gaze steadily, silently for several seconds. And I wonder what he was really saying. Let's go on. Combs and Cassandra Cassie Ventura, a former singer for his iconic Bad Boy record label, had split 4 years earlier, but he had been openly pining for her ever since. He posted photos of her online and urged her to listen to Michael Jackson's "The Lady in My Life." He publicly congratulated her on her first pregnancy with her husband. His comments at the award show was part of a pattern of behavior, one that had been tormenting Ventura for years. When she learned of her ex's latest remark, sources say Ventura was distressed. She was also resolute. After 18 months later, in November 2023, Ventura sued Combs, claiming he held her in a violent form of sexual servitude throughout their relationship, and he violated her physically in a sexual manner upon their final breakup in 2018. She invoked Combs' BET speech in her filing. For Miss Ventura, the dark times were those she spent trapped by Mr. Combs in a cycle of abuse, violence, and sex trafficking. She said Combs' brutal beatings, one of them captured in a Heron hotel surveillance video obtained by CNN in May, left her with bruises, burst lips, black eyes, and extensive trauma. At some point, Ventura checked herself into a rehabilitation center to deal with the physical and psychological repercussions of her time with Combs and found renewed purpose in being a mom, her lawsuit says. She eventually gathered her strength and stepped forward. A flurry of other lawsuits followed. 5 more women have since accused Combs of violently sexually assaulting them as far back as the 1990s. 2 of whom claim that Combs secretly recorded their violent encounters, I'm adding that in there, and showed the footage to others without their consent. Music producer Rodney Lil Rod Jones also sued, alleging Combs groped his genitals and forced him to solicit sex workers and perform sex acts to the pleasure of Mr. Combs. I wish you would. Okay, let's go on. For many, the lurid allegations against Combs were jarring, in part because he had risen to such great heights as a bankable bon vivant who threw the best parties from New York City to the Hamptons to Hollywood. Turned up at a Met Gala wearing a crystal-encrusted tuxedo and floor-length cape. He rapped about Bentleys and Benjamins and held court at his over-the-top annual white parties, attended by DiCaprio, Beyonce, Mariah Carey, and Martha Stewart. He called himself the Great Gatsby and considered circus showman P.T. Barnum his muse. Ain't that about nothing? So y'all, if he was the what are they called in the circus, the one who controlled the acts? If he was the controller of the acts, he basically was saying y'all was his animals and his client. Ooh, he didn't think too highly of y'all. Let's go on. Now, the spotlight Combs constantly chased is trained on his alleged crimes and staggering scenes that underscored his fall from grace. Heavily armed Homeland Security agents. Okay, it just goes into talking about them going into his house. 3 gleaming Grammys and an Oscar sat atop a gutted council like relics of a crumbling regime. A crescent fall Combs was later seen alone, a cell phone hanging useless in his hand as he slowly paced around at the Miami Opa-locka airport. His vacation in the Bahamas was canceled, his once fortified homes breached, his adult sons handcuffed, and his empire on the brink. What's that saying? The bigger you are, the harder you fall. And Sean was a giant. He really was. He really was. If he built his castle on a firm foundation, he wouldn't be going through this now. Let's continue. While the raids made global headlines, the silence from Combs' famous friends was palpable. This felt different than before, when he could use a checkbook, a high-powered attorney, and a media blitz to overcome scrapes with the law, when his charisma, influence, and connections would allow him to shake off allegations of violence or outcry from his disenfranchised artists. Reparations is getting closer and closer, former Bad Boy artist May said a day after the raids. The big payback. Over the past 6 months, Rolling Stone has conducted dozens of interviews with Combs' former friends, acquaintances, employees, and Bad Boy artists, as well as industry insiders. Out of 300 plus people contacted for this investigation, more than 50 were willing to speak about their experiences. Woo-wee. Several would do so only off the record, citing a fear of retribution. Some requested compensation in exchange for their stories. Rolling Stones does not pay for interviews. Many declined to participate, wanting to distance themselves from Combs. I'm trying to leave that part of my life behind, says one former employee. Those who did speak about Combs described a complicated man with opposing personas. Outwardly, they see a taskmaker who was so undriven, generous, and jovial, even silly at times. He could be the same privately, but associates who got close enough to him discovered something darker behind the facade. A menacing figure who desperately wants to be accepted and admired, who uses public declarations of devotion, splashy donations, and boasts that he is brother love, to hide an undercurrent of alleged abuse and violence that in one previously unreported allegation traces back to before his career even started. Combs wielded his growing power to bend people to his will. Didn't I say that in another video? I said it's like he wants to own your essence. Okay, let's continue. Sources claim sending staffers to win back one-time girlfriend J-Lo, beating a label executive bloody after he became romantically involved with Combs' ex-partner Kim Porter, and allegedly trying to solicit sex from a woman on his payroll. Joy Dickerson-Neal, who is suing Combs for SA, tells Rolling Stone that her decision to come forward isn't about money. It's about making sure the world sees that this man who rose to the level of an icon is actually sick and has left so many victims in the wake of his unpunished, disgusting behavior for years. And the ones who were supposed to hold this man accountable in that industry need to be held accountable. Because of them, they allowed this man to do so much more. If they had stopped him, he wouldn't have been able to do it. Let's continue. A year before her breakup with Combs, Ventura conceptualized a short film titled Cassie that appears telling in hindsight in a voiceover speaking about the film's fictionalized romance. She says, "How do you just walk away from it and escape it? I just want to be free." Many who watched footage of the assault were stung, even those who'd known Combs for years. LaJoyce Brookshire, the former publicity director for Arista and Bad Boys, says she was disturbed to learn that these types of actions could have occurred and that Puffy could stand in my face the next day with a straight face. That shakes me to my core. Several women who attended Howard with Combs, however, had seen signs of a controlling and abusive personality decades ago. Combs started at the esteemed college in the fall in 1987 and quickly earned a reputation for throwing legendary rowdy parties. Flamboyant and boisterous, he was often seen driving his convertible around campus and passing out flyers. What kind of convertible? Let's continue. Though he left after sophomore year, Combs turned Howard into a pipeline for his enterprises, teaming up with future label execs and producers Pierre Mark Pitts and Derek Diddy, all key figures in Bad Boys' early success. Shantae Page, a former A&R executive for Universal Motown Record Group, was among those who say they had positive experiences with Combs at Howard, calling his iconic parties a once-in-a-lifetime type vibe. He was a go-getter from the start, she says, always in the know. But other women described previously unreported incidents involving unwanted touching and fits of rage. One woman says she kept as far away as possible after Combs caressed her back without warning and asked if she would be willing to meet one of his friends. Another former student recalled that Combs flew off the handle after she objected to him cutting a cafeteria line. Let's continue. While the moments may seem small, they show flashes of danger that would soon explode. A third former student recalls how the future mogul would tap on the window of an English class to get a girlfriend to ditch. The visit became noticeably unwelcome, the classmate tells Rolling Stone. She would tense up when Combs appeared. The student who sat next to the woman in class recalls, "He just had a weird control thing. I felt like she was fearful." The classmate who requested to be anonymous due to fear of retribution says her concerns were validated when Combs appeared outside the school's Harriet Tubman dorm and started screaming in a belligerent manner for his girlfriend to come outside. The classmate says other women soon began running through the halls, knocking on doors in a panic. They were sounding the alarm that Combs, known then by his nickname Puff, was attacking a young woman outside, she recalls. Puff is out here acting crazy. He's beating her, the fellow student said, according to the classmate. He screamed and hollered and acted a stone fool until she came downstairs. Another Howard student who witnessed the alleged attack tells Rolling Stone. She says Combs used what appeared to be a belt to strike the young woman all over the place. Speaking on the condition of her being anonymous, due to the sensitive nature of the incident, the witness said Combs appeared super angry and was screaming at the top of his lungs. She says he whooped her butt, like really whooped her butt. The witness says the woman was clearly terrorized. She was trying to defend herself a little bit. She was crying, and we were telling him, "Get off her." We were screaming for her. A third source also recalled the alleged assault to Rolling Stone. The woman at the center of the alleged attack declined comment. I know she did. Let's continue. Combs was born with a short fuse, telling Jet magazine he earned his nickname as a kid because he would always huff and puff. You are what you name yourself. He should have left that name alone. Let's continue. When he got mad, I had a temper. He huffed and puffed when he got mad. That's why my friends started calling me Puff. He said his mom, Janice, a former kindergarten teacher, described him as a ham. Combs barely knew his father, Melvin, a handsome drug dealer working for a Harlem kingpin. He was murdered in 1972 at the age of 33 when Combs was just a toddler. Throughout the years, Combs mourned the loss of his father figure, but Melvin had a profound influence on him nonetheless. Even if we don't know our parents, we still have their DNA in us, and we have their genes, Combs said. I have his hustler's mentality, his hustler's spirit, his drive, his determination, his swag. When Janice moved the family from Harlem to the suburb of Mount Vernon, 12 miles north, Combs straddled disparate words. In one, he was a defensive back on the football team at his all-boys Catholic high school. In the other, he rode a train to the city, immersing himself in a hip-hop scene. I didn't know exactly what he would do, but he was blasting me out of the house with his mixing kit I bought him when he was 13, making that noise, scratching those records, Janice told Vibe in 1993. After a taste of celebrity at Howard, Combs itched for more. He was hell-bent on breaking into the music industry, simultaneously attending college and working a part-time internship at Uptown Records back in New York City. It was Uptown artist Heavy D, a neighbor in Mount Vernon, who brokered the job interview after Combs repeatedly badgered the rapper at their local pizza spot. Former Uptown A&R VP Kurt Woodley tells Rolling Stone. Combs commuted from Howard for the job, evading the train fare by hiding from the conductor in the bathroom. He dropped out of school to work at Uptown full-time, eventually becoming CEO Andre Harrell's mentee. Combs' ascent at Uptown is by now part of his lure. He helped newcomers Mary J. Blige, Jodeci go multi-platinum after reshaping their images. He reinvented the remix and ushered hip-hop soul into the cultural lexicon. He threw exclusive Daddy's House parties at the since-shuttered Manhattan hip-hop club Red Zone that even his older Uptown colleagues jocked to attend. He had the ability to convince people that whatever he was doing or wherever he was, that was the hot-ish. Done Charnes. Arthur the Big Payback, The History of the Business of Hip Hop, tells Rolling Stone, he understood more than anyone how the innovations of hip hop, specifically sampling and using classic rap records as a basis for R&B song. As Combs' star was rising at Uptown, his predatory instincts resurfaced, according to the SA lawsuit filed by Joy Dickerson Neal last November. Dickerson Neal acted opposite Combs in a 1990 music video and received what she considered a warning from Bronx rapper Sister Souljah to keep her distance given his infamous reputation. Sister Souljah did not reply to a request for a comment. Dickerson Neal says she reluctantly agreed to a dinner date with Combs in January 1991 while she was a college student paying for her studies with a restaurant job. Wary of being alone with him, she requested they dine where she worked. She alleges Combs spiked her drink when she used the restroom and later pressured her into taking a hit off a blunt. She says her legs went rubbery a short time later and that Combs attacked her. You know, I'm just not going to say the word, the R word. This occurred at her residence, her nearby residence. She also claims Combs filmed the attack and showed the video to others like a trophy. Through a rep, Combs denied the allegations at that time. This 32-year-old story is made up and not credible. Mr. Combs never assaulted her. Combs' lawyers have moved to dismiss portions of the lawsuit, calling the allegation false, offensive, and salacious. Mike Nice Lewis, who worked with Dickerson Neal at the short-lived PMD Records, tells Rolling Stone that she confided in him at the office about the alleged SA in the early 1990s. Combs and Bad Boy came up in conversation, and Lewis says Dickerson Neal's demeanor abruptly changed. Lewis claims Dickerson Neal told him that she had a very bad sexual experience with Combs, keeping her head down as she talked. I believe Joy, he says. I just knew from what she was telling me that it still affected her even 2 years later. The attorney for Dickerson Neal's and another accuser, Crystal McKinney, the amount of irreparable harm to my clients' mental health and professional lives cannot be overstated. Back in the Uptown office, Combs' inflated ego, outsized opinions, Machiavellian scheming were becoming a problem for his peers. He went from internally divisive to openly controversial in December 1991 when he and Heavy D helped organize a celebrity charity basketball game at City College of New York that left 9 people dead, aged 15 to 28. Combs shirked responsibility, claiming he had tried to enlist help from the NYPD and that he had personally administered CPR to several people. But an incident report ordered by then Mayor David Dinkins faulted him for allowing inexperienced underlings to handle that event planning and found that reckless overpromotion had drawn too many people without tickets to the event. And I implore you guys to check the video out I did called Dirty Diddy, and that'll explain a little bit more about who was actually responsible for that tragedy. Let's continue. With the city investigating possible criminal charges, lawsuits mounting, and rivals pushing Harrell to cut Combs loose, the Uptown exec urged Combs to lie low. A terrified Combs spent months holed up in a Manhattan hotel with his mother, according to Kirk Burrows, Bad Boy's co-founding partner and president. After the controversy subsided and Combs returned to Uptown, he still considered himself Harrell's heir apparent, but his access to his mentor was restricted. He spent much of 1992 producing Blage's landmark debut, What's the 411, gaining redemption in the album's acclaim. Around this time, he founded his own Uptown imprint, Bad Boy Entertainment, where he could sign his own artists and make extra cash. Burrows remembers Jealous, Uptown execs referring to Combs as Satan. and flipping him off as they walked by his small offices in the Uptown building. Harold soured on him too, as Woodley recalls. Harold said, "I'm gonna fire Puff. He's getting a little too big for himself. He's bothering people." With pressure mounting, Harold fired Combs in July 1993. Uptown was supposed to oversee the album release of Combs' newest signee, Christopher Wallace, aka Notorious Big, but Combs was free to find a new home for his fledgling label. The termination was devastating for Combs, Burroughs says, leaving the 23-year-old crying buckets of tears outside the office. He loved Andre, Burroughs said. He loved Uptown. He didn't understand what Bad Boy was going to do. "I cried for a couple of days and I felt like I wanted to jump off the building," Combs told Rolling Stones in '95. "I think at times I was hard to work with. Possibly I was doing ish that an a-hole would do, just abusing the power, but that was only a little bit of the time." Cast out of Uptown and blamed for a tragedy that claimed 9 lives, Combs could have faded into obscurity, but he was scrappy and determined, quickly securing a reported $10 million deal from Arista Records, Clive Davis, that kept Bad Boy Entertainment alive. Now he was helming a skeleton crew eager to turn artists into superstars and cement hip-hop. "I was working in it and watching it unfold," says Michelle Joyce, Bad Boy's first director of marketing, who with Brookshire co-created the woman behind the Mike Book series. "I knew behind a shadow of a doubt that it wasn't if it was going to pop. It was when." It wasn't easy. Hours were brutal, pay was low, and the workload intense. The next summer, only 1 year after Combs' dismissal from Uptown, their work paid off with Craig Mack's ubiquitous Flavor in Your Ear and Notorious B.I.G. One More Chance. In the next 3 years, Bad Boy would become the premier label for upcoming hip-hop and R&B artists, churning out chart-topping albums from Faith Evans, Total, and 112, and soundtracking clubs and radio stations nationwide. And in Wallace, Bad Boy had a budding superstar, Biggie Smalls, the storytelling genius with the effortless flow. Still, Combs was volatile. Burroughs says he once saw Combs attack a woman inside Bad Boy's office in 1994. He and another ex-employee tell Rolling Stone they had to tear Combs off the woman after hearing screams and the sound of shattering glass. The woman declined Rolling Stone's request for a comment. Felicia Newsom, the first manager of Bad Boy's recording studio, Daddy's House, says she once held Combs back when he was about to beat this little girl's ass after a fight broke out between 2 women. "I'm holding him by his waist saying, 'You need to calm down. This is not your fight,'" Newsom recalled. As Bad Boy was on the rise, staffers kept Combs' transgressions quiet, whether out of loyalty, fear, or a belief that such incidents were rare. Outwardly, he was the label's unceasing hype man, ad-libbing on tracks and making cameos in his artist videos. It was clear he wanted something bigger for himself. I distinctly remember the day that Clive Davis called and asked me to start garnering press for Puffy, just as if he were the artist, says Brookshire. Behind his back, I used to call him my problem child, the notorious VIP. Multiple reports allege Wallace had been preparing to leave Bad Boy shortly before his death. It didn't help that Combs had been fighting with Wallace's attorneys, who were trying to wrest back the rapper's publishing rights. "I will never give it up until I'm dead and my bones are crushed into powder," Combs told the lawyers, according to the Big Payback. Biggie was absolutely about to leave Puff, Bond says. "I know for a fact because he told me that." Another source adds, "Everybody wanted to leave Puff. Everybody leaves him." Combs was difficult to work for. Employees who wanted to stick around had to learn how to speak Puffy, Brookshire and multiple sources say. A demanding boss, Combs often yelled to get his point across and fired employees on a whim. No one on his team at Bad Boy spoke back to him. Former Daddy's House studio manager Newsom says no one challenged him. Another source recalls Mace, whose real name is Mason Betha, calling Combs massa behind his back. Betha did not reply to a request for a comment. He was so volatile, says a source who sometimes worked with Bad Boy. He's always on the edge of snapping and being scary. People did whatever he said to stay in his good graces, and Puffy exploited people's desire to be in those environments. And folks, that will be the end for me. The article goes on. There's more to it, but like I said, my voice, I have to preserve my voice. And yeah, it's funny how even in the 90s, like I said, it was something about this guy that it just didn't sit well. That's what you call discernment. God's discernment. I'm about to shut down the shop. I don't have too much to say. The articles they spoke for themselves. And I thank you guys for your time, attention, support, subscriptions, comments, liking, sharing. It all works together for the good. Sharing is caring. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.